Right, welcome in, race fans. Sorry we're a couple minutes late. Had some technical difficulties, but William and I are here to discuss the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. We are unfortunately without Ross and Michael today, so if you don't like the two of us, that's tough luck because it's going to be all of our opinions. Yeah, so William, how's it going?
Doing pretty good. We had some interesting practice this morning, and I think we got a really fun weekend ahead of us.
I hope so. I was unfortunately awake for both the practice sessions, which was fun, even though the first one, not much happened. Um, we had some track issues, which is always a good time. Reminds me of Vegas a couple years back. We've lost an entire practice session because of that.
Hide your train covers.
Oh yeah. All right. So I don't know if I guess we can start with a little bit of a recap on Italy, which feels like an entire month ago.
Yeah, it's just been a couple weeks, but it feels like longer. So we'll go over the winners and losers fantasy wise. We had a few drivers up 2 million or darn near it. So our big winners would be Max Verstappen winning the race. It's been a while since we've said that. So Max Verstappen up 2 million. Alex Albon up 2 million at 19.9 in a Williams. How much higher can he go? We'll get to that later in the show. Gabriel Bortoleto up 2 million with his points finish. Also, Kimi Antonelli keeping the car in one piece, gets himself up 1.9. Those were our biggest winners. Our biggest losers would be Nico Hulkenberg, Mr. Box to retire even before the race starts, and Lance Stroll, which, stroller coaster. We kind of called that. We were at the top, and now we're not quite at the top anymore. Also, Fernando Alonso failing to finish the race when his suspension broke. Those would be the big losers from this weekend, driver-wise, constructor-wise. Nobody massively winning and losing. Ferrari up the most at 1.2 million. Aston down 1.9 with their issues at Italy. And so now we go to a very different track. We were at a very wide open Italian Grand Prix at Monza. Now we're at a street course Azerbaijan where there's a lot of walls.
A lot of walls, and I think going back to the two big winners of Max and Albon, I think were both guys that I was selling before Italy. So that is not a great look for me. I think I said Max can't win. He doesn't really have a chance here. And that went out the window pretty quick. He was incredible. And Albon, I thought he was too high a price. I'm wrong again. Up 2 million, really good race. And now he is out of talent driver territory.
Yeah, he found a way to go higher.
Although I am kind of the Stroll whisperer. I was right to sell on Stroll. He was a disaster, as well as Aston Martin as a whole. I think we were on top of that one.
We were. Sometimes we get it right around here, and I'm feeling the same way about Aston this weekend, but we'll get to that when we get to talent driver territory.
Yeah, I see it in the chat. Apologies, and Rocks, for cue the music. There was unfortunately no music today. It was a little bit of a scramble to get this online. We had a couple issues, so I'm glad we're live at all.
And Twiggy's got a question regarding Italy, which we can address that. The Carlos Sainz penalty, were there any adjustments? So what happened since the Italian Grand Prix? We saw it during the race. Sainz had gotten a time penalty for causing a collision. He served that penalty on a pit stop, and then the rest of the race happened. Williams invoked the right to review in the past in the interceding 2 weeks between the last race and this one, and they decided that should not have been a penalty. That said, you can't reverse a time penalty that was served during the race. So the standings did not change. We do not change the fantasy points. We were past the time where we consider appeals anyway. Sainz did have the penalty points dropped from his license, though. They were able to do that for him. So there have been no adjustments for Sainz with that right of review, unfortunately, for those of you who might have been Sainz owners.
Well said. Yeah, I think with that, unless you have any other thoughts on Italy, you can turn the page to Azerbaijan.
Yeah, those tires lasted too long. Hopefully these tires fall apart quicker. They got to get those good years they were running at Bristol last week. that just fall apart in like 20 miles.
That no one saw coming either after practice. So that one, we'll see what Pirelli can do. Probably nothing, but
yeah, and I think it is tier time, and we start off with Lando Norris, Oscar Piastri, Max Verstappen, and Charles Leclerc, ranging from 28.8 to 25.8 million dollars or pounds, since we're F1. And what do we call this tier, Ryan?
This is the wake and bake tier. We're up at really early hours in the morning. This time zone is crazy. So really weird wake up times. And these four guys are the highest salaries and the highest likelihood to win. So wake and bake, get high.
Wakey, wakey, eggs and bakey. That's what David Hobbs used to say if these early races.
It's a little more appropriate, I think, than mine. Probably should
more family friendly. But
yeah.
Anyway, yeah. So thoughts on this tier? You go first.
I hate to be. I mean, this burned me last time selling on Verstappen, but he is the last guy I would roster from these four. I think this is not a great spot for Red Bull. He didn't look remarkable in the practice sessions, so I'm selling on him again. I guess do that at your own risk because we saw what happened in Italy, but I'll be the fool and try it again. And kind of like I said with Italy, Leclerc looks really good, as does Ferrari. Both Leclerc and Hamilton looked great this morning. And I think Leclerc is easily the better choice of the Ferrari drivers. And with McLaren, they did have some issues in FP1. Piastri had a power unit issue. Lando got into the wall in FP2. So it was kind of it wasn't the best day for them, but they're still going to be there. I have no reason to believe I'm just going to sell off on McLaren by any means. So despite the issues that they encountered today, they should still be strong. But I do think Leclerc at this price point, a couple $1 million cheaper, is a really good guy to build your lineup around.
Yes, I'm loving Leclerc. I like Ferrari this weekend as a whole. That they could both podium potentially this weekend. I wouldn't be that shocked if Leclerc were to win this race. Red Bull traditionally does not mix well with street courses, so I'm down on Verstappen. Practice did not really inspire all that much. Then again, they didn't practice very well at Monza on Friday either. And look what happened there. Tsunoda actually was ahead of Verstappen in FP1. I was about to say not far off. He was actually ahead of him. So that's sort of an interesting weekend for Red Bull. Yeah, so I'm not at all confident about Verstappen. McLaren, I think they're going to be just fine, and they're closing in on mathematically clinching that Constructors' Championship. Yeah, out of this tier, Leclerc's definitely the best. I'm holding McLaren. I could be talked into buying one of them if I've got the money to spare. I see the chat already playing up Mercedes, and I do think there's some bargains there if you have less budget. But yeah, Leclerc's the must-have. McLaren, if you can swing it, if you've got the money, then sure, go for McLaren. Otherwise, there may be some better value down the order this week. And important to realize as well, we're into the final third of the season. We are thinking more about points than gaining value at this point. And we're getting close to where you can sign somebody for the rest of the year. We're not quite there yet, but we're getting there.
Yeah, points are king right now, and that's kind of what I'm trying to build my lineup around. And that being said, I currently have both the McLaren's rosters, so I have to figure out if I'm going to keep doing that. It just was not a great morning for them, but at the same time, you can't write off McLaren, I don't think, at any point at any track. And Baku obviously no different. Like they should be extremely strong, whereas Leclerc is probably a little more of a lottery ticket because they just haven't shown that consistency. But yeah, I think McLaren will be fine. We'll see what happens tomorrow in FP3, but yeah, I'm not going to sell on them unless I see something very alarming tomorrow, because that is a pretty solid cut fee to eat.
I just hope they don't strategize Leclerc out of the race. Ferrari does do that on occasion.
They do. And I guess speaking of strategy, probably not a bad time to talk about what the hell McLaren is doing with their strategy with these two drivers and the way that the driver championship's playing out. Because who knows at this, Italy got kind of weird. They were met with a lot of criticism online. They were also met with a lot of people supporting it online. I don't really care that much, but I know it's a huge talking point.
So here's my take. So generally, whoever's ahead gets the preferred strategy. They did it differently to make sure that they lock up the second and third rather than potentially get caught. So, like they even set up right, there won't be an undercut, and then they botch the pit stop. I can understand putting it right at this point in the year, especially without the constructors clinched yet. I think once they officially lock it up, I don't think they can do this anymore. I think they just have to do what they normally do, let the chips fall as they may. And I don't know that they're going to have to. Like if you have a guy running second, you have a guy running third. I don't think the duty is to keep the guy in third. I think the duty is to the guy in second, and whatever happens, happens.
Yeah, like I think if it happened midway through the race or earlier, it's you're not giving that position back. But it seemed like it was pretty agreed upon. I was listening to the radio that it was, if you pit now, you're going to come out ahead. Like he's not undercutting you, and it was just a bad stop, and they just wanted to make it right, I guess. But I'm fine with it because I'd like a little more excitement, I guess.
If this were Abu Dhabi, I think that would go very differently. Like you'd have another multi 21 where the guy in front just ignores the order. Or that time, I think it was Abu Dhabi, they had told Kimi Räikkönen to get out of the way. I think it was Lotus. They told him to get out of the way, like in stronger words, and he told him, "Shut the bleep up." So yeah, like when we get closer to the end of the season, I don't think it's going to be as friendly. Who knows? We maybe even see them collide at least once more this year. Some history there. McLaren's colliding as they're running for a championship. It's the 80s all over again. Will it rain? Who knows? Raul asking, will it rain? There is a chance that it'll rain. And
that'd be interesting.
A lot of this goes out the window then. Was there anything on the Piastri yellow flag issue? So what they said was he never actually saw a yellow flag. He just saw the green flag afterwards. So he got off with a reprimand. No grid drop.
Yeah. All right. I think we're probably ready to move on to the. I see a lot of stuff in the chat on Russell, so we can get to that now in this second tier.
Yeah. Top of our second tier is George Russell at 24.8 million. And then we've got Alex Albon and Lewis Hamilton rounding out the above talent driver territory. Hamilton down at 19.4 million. And what are we calling these three drivers?
These guys are the fiddlers on the roof. They're not quite the stars like the top four above them, but they're still above the talent driver eligibility, so they're on that roof. And I also look at these guys as to keep with the fiddle theme. They're kind of playing second fiddle here. I don't think any of them can challenge the top four for a race win, but they, like George Russell especially, should be in the mix.
I think Russell's in the podium conversation, and I really like Russell out of this tier. I like Hamilton the next best. Albon is once again showing pace where we can expect to see him in the points, but I do think he's just about at the ceiling. If he has a good fantasy point day, it's probably because Sainz had a bad day for some reason, and he got extra teammate points. Sainz looks a little bit more borderline for points. Also, Sainz, I have to say, does have that tendency to fade on race day compared to where he practiced. So maybe there's a little bit more you can squeeze out of Albon, but I like Albon the least out of these three drivers just because he's at the ceiling at this point. And I'm looking up his improvement index now. I don't have that in front of me. Albon's improvement index is 13th. Okay, so a point finish, like a reasonably in the point finish, could still get him some improvement points. But that window is going to start to close as well if he keeps producing at this level. But yeah, Russell can podium. Hamilton can podium. I want the guys who can podium out of this tier. And yes, Russell's a lot more expensive. And this may even be a one-race contract. I haven't done the research on how they look at Singapore.
Yeah, and with Russell, he probably does belong in the conversation with those top four guys. I do think he's slightly below them, but just for the exercise of the tiers and the way we discuss the drivers, we try and keep it with talent driver eligibility within a tier, and then once you get out of that, so I'd rather just split it up 4 and 3 than 5 and 2, so it's easier to kind of give everyone a little bit more time to talk about each driver. I like Hamilton a little more than Russell. I think the Ferrari just looks strong. I think Hamilton looked better in the practice sessions. Um, I do think Russell has a higher floor. He's more consistent than Hamilton is, but I do think Hamilton's a driver who, he can P2, P3 podium. I see Russell as like a very good bet to be P4, P5. But he has a lot less downside. Like I could also see Hamilton finishing P12. Qualifies poorly, something weird happens, but Russell just seems to always put together a solid race.
For me, the issue is that Hamilton, for whatever reason, just hasn't clicked with Ferrari. Like it's not like the Mercedes days. Maybe it's because he's gotten older. Maybe it's just he's in a place that is very different from where he spent pretty much his entire career. This is the first year he hasn't had Mercedes power. Like even in the McLaren days, they were a Mercedes powered team and they were the number one team. There was no Mercedes factory team back when Hamilton was there, at least most of the years he was there. So yeah, different environment for sure.
And then good comment here, Tipsy Socks asking about dropping Albon. I think you should drop him for Hamilton. We'll see how FP3 goes. My gut would be yes, do that. I think for sure if you're signing one of these guys and it's between Albon or Hamilton at that price point, it's Hamilton every single time. Albon's been great. He's just, I can't pay 20 million for a Williams. I'm sure I said this last week that I couldn't pay, 17, and he proved me wrong. So maybe it happens again, but all things equal, I think you have to lean Hamilton and a Ferrari over Albon here, especially he's $500,000 cheaper. So if you're picking one to roster, it's definitely Hamilton, and it's a little tougher conversation if you factor in having to pay a drop fee. But I think it's still the right call.
How long do you want Hamilton for in this scenario? I've got an idea. I'm curious what you think.
I feel like top of my head, I kind of like him long just because I think this is a good price. Hamilton under 20 million, I think is a bargain. Let's see, it's Singapore coming up.
So yeah, Singapore and then Austin, which is a sprint. Then you have Mexico, and then the fifth race would be Brazil, which is another sprint.
He's good at all those tracks.
Yeah. My thinking is probably 3 races for Hamilton. Have him for Azerbaijan where he's looking fast. Have him for Singapore where Red Bull looks bad and Ferrari's probably going to do okay. Have him for the sprint at Austin. Hamilton's gotten it done at Austin, admittedly in a faster car, but he has gotten it done at Austin. Ferrari's gotten it done at Austin for that matter.
Yeah.
I'll have him out for Mexico and then reassess at the for the back ends of the season. Once we get to that, how many? This is what 7 races after this one. This is round 17, right?
Yeah, this is round 17.
Yeah, there's 24 rounds, so there's 7 races left after this one. You have to have him out for 1 race. My inclination is Mexico. Like if you do 5 races, he's out for, I believe, Vegas would be race number 6.
Very strong in Vegas. Yeah. I don't know if I probably want him for Vegas would be my gut instinct there.
Yeah. Assuming we want him for the sprint weekends in Brazil, then probably 3 races or less so that you have him out or you have him available for Brazil and the rest of the season for that matter. If you have him out for Mexico, whoever you have out for Mexico, you can have him the rest of the year. For that matter, anyone you have out for Austin, you can have for the rest of the year.
Yeah, I like seeing some comments in the chat about the extra points available for sprint weekends. It shows that they've been listening throughout the season, which has been great.
That's right. So drivers score points based on sprint position, 20 for the winner, 1 for 20th place. Constructors do not score points for sprints, just for qualifying and race as usual. We'll have to tweak those numbers next year. There's going to be 22 cars next year. That's on my list of things to do, actually. Come up with scoring tweaks for 22 cars. Can't wait.
Oh, yeah. New team on the grid. Let's go.
But
Shake things
Cadillac,
up a bit.
Bottas and Perez, that came out in the last few weeks. What do we think? We get a little extra time. What do we think about Bottas and Perez for Cadillac?
I like it. I'm kind of interested to see. I think Checo's gotten, people have warmed up to him a little bit just because he was getting a lot of people are very unhappy with the way he was driving that Red Bull. And I think it's kind of coming out that that car is borderline undrivable for anyone not named Max Verstappen. So I think people are starting to warm up on Checo a bit. And I think having Bottas around and having a seat is great for the sport. He's fun.
Yeah, I think Perez beats Bottas. I think they're both kind of cooked. I think Bottas is going to be pretty cooked. And I'm actually a little disappointed that it was the two of them who we've seen a lot of. I would have liked to see them sign Jack Crawford to one of those seats. Get an American in the American car. Maybe one of these guys gets bumped for Colton Herta in 2027. Colton Herta, the IndyCar star, heading to Formula 2 next year. Gonna hopefully get himself some super license points. We're probably going to see him on a bunch of Fridays in that Cadillac. Like he'll qualify as a young driver and score some super license points that way. He is the test and reserve driver there.
Yeah, part of me thinks like
Caleb wanted to see Ricardo come back. Ricardo said he's done. Ricardo said he's done with racing.
That would be entertaining though. But I think Cadillac probably wanted some proven drivers, and I'm sure they can really help with development of the car and giving feedback. So it does make some sense, and then maybe pivot next season to give a young kid a shot or someone who's a bigger name. Like I think Herta would generate a lot of interest. I don't know how good he'll be, but it will be a big storyline, and I'm sure Cadillac doesn't hate the press.
Maybe Americans will actually find out where Formula 2 is streamed and watch that. Yeah, so they do put on a pretty good show. I do try and watch Formula 2 when I can.
Yes. Anrox wins prize of the day. I was waiting. I didn't want to say it. I was waiting for someone to bring up Logan Sargent. So Anrox, you're the winner. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, I hear he's even racing again. I think he's in a sports car of some kind these days.
Good.
Yeah, my hope for Ricardo is that at some point him and Dale Earnhardt Jr. can get together and Ricardo actually drives one of his cars at an Xfinity race at some road course somewhere.
That'd be fun.
That would be fun. Yeah, so on to the talent tier then. We've got Isaac Hadjar, Fernando Alonso, Oliver Behrman, and Liam Lawson in the first of our talent tiers. That's 15.6 to 13.7 million in value. And this tier is which one?
This is the yo-yo diet tier. They've been kind of bouncing around up and down like yo-yos, and I feel like we talk about them every time about just being right under the talent driver eligibility. And also with two of the V carbs in here, you have to make a choice if you want a low carb or high carb diet.
Yeah, and I definitely have an opinion that way. Like I think if we're looking at this tier, we got to go for all the carbs. Like we're having just like this giant disgusting loaf of bread or like a really thick doughy pizza, like a Sicilian pizza, or maybe just a ridiculous number of garlic knots.
Yep.
So yeah, we want the carbs. Aston did not look very good. I'm out on Alonso. I think they're going to continue to fall. Behrman could go either way. We've seen Behrman surprise to the upside and find himself in the points.
Haas are just so hard to figure out because they look so bad in practice, especially FP1. And then you never really know what you're going to get out of them from a weekend. Behrman's put together some really solid races. He's actually been, I think, pretty impressive, especially based on expectations I've had for him. And yeah, like FP1, I don't think he was anywhere. And then FP2, you're like, oh, wow, he's P5. What was that?
Yeah, I do like Racing Bulls the best as far as raw pace. Lawson was looking actually a little bit faster than Hadjar and perhaps a little bit more trustworthy, having more experience than Hadjar does. Street courses are not so forgiving. If you make a mistake, you may run into something and be out of the race. So I'm okay taking either Racing Bull. I might actually go Lawson over Hadjar if I'm in this tier. Yeah, Behrman good too. I'm not touching Alonso.
Yep, I give the nod to Lawson over Hadjar. both because he's cheaper and looked a little stronger today. But at the same time, I would not be dropping Hadjar to sign Lawson if that's the position you're in. I think if you have to pick one, it's probably Lawson, and then you can deploy that extra $2 million somewhere else to help your lineup. Behrman just too inconsistent, I think, for me. There's a chance that he has another great run in him, and that's fine. But I'm fine just sitting him out and seeing what happens. And then Alonso is a huge stay away. I definitely go Behrman over Alonso if those are my two choices. Alonso is just someone I don't think I'm ever signing.
Alonso for me is a strong sell this week, actually.
He might be the last guy I would rather have. I'd rather have anyone else on the grid at whatever price point than Alonso.
Like they're gonna Aston, they're gonna beat Alpine, and that's about it. Like on pace, they're gonna beat Alpine, and they're gonna beat whoever crashes. That's it.
Yeah, you don't want to spend $15 million on a guy who's going to be 16. P17.
Yeah. So I think that sums up this tier pretty well.
So, it's really not an attractive tier. The prices are a little high, and I think there's some value further down. Other than maybe Lawson, I do like Lawson. I think Lawson's the only guy I'd probably find his way onto my roster this week, just at price, and I think he looks pretty strong. Hadjar's a little too expensive, I think. But again, if you have him, I don't think he's worth a cut. You probably just keep him. He's a hold.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I'm not selling Hadjar. The only sell for me is Alonso out of that
100%.
tier.
Alonso is definitely a pay the cut fee, pay the drop fee if you've got him.
The pace they showed in practice, you're going to lose another $2 million holding him.
Yeah, I would say that's very likely.
So next tier, I think there's a lot more intrigue here. Kimi Antonelli, Gabriel Bortoleto, Carlos Sainz Jr., and Yuki Tsunoda.
This is the Kimi Eat World tier. If anyone's familiar with the famous Jimmy Eat World song, The Middle, these guys kind of are just in the middle. And it's headlined by Kimi. And I think that they're all kind of on the upswing here. And we saw, I think they were all green last week. At a 1.9, a 2, a 1, and Tsunoda stayed flat. But these guys are all a lot more interesting to me than anyone in the tier above, if I'm being honest.
13.7 to 12.2, by the way, the price ranges in this tier. And I like Antonelli. If he can keep the car in one piece, he's looking pretty good. Mercedes is looking good. I want Antonelli. And fingers crossed, like I'm actually going to want him for more than one race. Like I'm even going to dare to have him for Singapore and probably Austin as well. Bortoleto, I'm less sold on this week. Sauber hasn't looked as fast this week between him and Hulkenberg. So take that as you may. He may or may not be a sell. He's not a buy. Yeah, Sainz, I think, has a lot of upside. I think Sainz is another talent driver contender. Williams is fast, and theoretically, he's fairly close to Albon. That said, he's another one of those guys who fizzles on Sunday for whatever reason. So there's some risk there. Tsunoda seems to be getting better with the Red Bull. I think he can finish in the points. And if you are still looking for some value, in the points, it's going to be good for Tsunoda fantasy-wise.
Yeah.
So, Antonelli, Sainz, Tsunoda in that order. I don't want Bortoleto.
Yeah, and I think Antonelli is probably my top choice for talent driver, most likely. He looked very strong today. The Mercedes should be good. Most likely you're giving up teammate points, which is tough, but I think he makes up for it compared to everyone else in this tier. And yeah, I see Caleb's comment. He just can't trust Antonelli. He's been burned too many times. That is, I think, the only downside and the only hesitation I have on Antonelli is I too have been burned by Antonelli multiple times this season, thinking that he would come out strong. The Mercedes was strong, and he beached his car in lap 2 or qualified terribly. So he's had those rookie moments for sure, but I think on pace, he's looked stronger. The car has pace. I just think that he's the guy you got to kind of take a flyer on and probably make talent driver as well. But Sainz is like you said, William. I think Sainz is also a good choice too.
And TB asking, would you drop Sainz for Kimi? I wouldn't. I think they're both perfectly serviceable talent drivers out of this tier. I like Kimi slightly better, but not to the point where I'm going to eat a drop fee for Sainz, who is likely to have a good day of his own.
Yeah. I don't know. I would consider it actually. I would wait till FP3. Again, never drop anyone until all the practice sessions are complete. You never know. We might see something different tomorrow. Not likely, but there's always a chance. Or if someone has a problem in FP3. So it's I would recommend not dropping anyone, but I would consider dropping Sainz or Antonelli, especially if he looks good again tomorrow morning, or depending on where you are in the world, overnight. So set those alarm clocks because it is another very early wake up call for anyone in the States.
Yeah, so glad we're getting near the end of the Europe hours for a while, or like even earlier than Europe hours. We're going to get to North America soon, we promise. Just a couple more rounds. Yeah, so so I think we've discussed this tier pretty thoroughly. Caleb wondering, drop Hadjar for Antonelli or Sainz?
Ooh, I think I would.
Yeah,
because that's a solid $2 to $3 million cheaper. Obviously, part of that gets eaten into by whatever the drop fee is. But I think I think they'll be stronger, especially Antonelli. So I'm willing to pay that drop fee to even save money on the back end by getting a cheaper driver who I think will actually outperform him as well. So yes, that is a drop that I would make.
Yeah, that's a very justifiable drop. I'd have to consider what the rest of my lineup looks like. Like maybe there's somebody who might be an even better drop to make this happen. If I'm holding Albon, I'm not so excited about holding Albon, for example. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that is something you could do for sure.
Yeah, and I guess I didn't say anything about Bortoletto. I think you touched on a little bit. Just he didn't. The kick salvers just did not look great. I actually was expecting a little more out of Bortoletto. I had him kind of circled as a guy I wanted to see how he was going to perform, and I was pretty disappointed by both him and his teammate. So I think I'm out on them, but they were two guys that I was looking at going into today. So yeah, and unless something changes drastically for FP3, I'm out on the kicks.
Yeah. Raul can't believe it. Antonelli outperforming Hadjar. Yeah, that's possible. And Antonelli's car is theoretically faster as well. He just has struggled a little bit more than Hadjar to put it all together over the course of a weekend.
I would actually be much more surprised. I would be much more surprised if Hadjar outperforms Antonelli than the other way around. I think Antonelli should definitely have a better weekend than Hadjar.
Yeah, for sure. So let's round out the drivers. We've got Esteban Ocon, Lance Stroll, Nico Hulkenberg, Pierre Gasly, and Franco Colapinto from 12.1 to 7.6 million in our bottom tier, which is which tier?
20,000 leagues under the sea. There's a lot of French influence in this tier, just like 20,000 leagues with Jules Verne. We've got Ocon, Gasly, and then both the Alpines. And these guys are sinking. They might as well be underwater. They all dropped a ton last week, and I don't think any of them are very good, especially here.
And Baku is below sea level. I think it's actually the furthest below sea level of any big city. I remember reading that somewhere.
Ooh.
So yeah, under the sea in that regard as well. So out of this tier, the only driver I think is touchable is Esteban Ocon, unless we're trying to fill out roster spots because we took expensive stuff. Haas has shown flashes of speed, like in FP2 in particular, and they do often find their way into the points. I think Behrman's been a bit better than Ocon in recent weeks, but I wouldn't be completely dumbfounded if Ocon found himself a point on Sunday. You could play Ocon. I think Alpine's the slowest team, and they're going to keep being the slowest team, and Colapinto might be Crash a Pinto once again. They haven't made Pintos in decades, though. How can we crash a Pinto? And then Sauber was slow, Aston was slow.
I very badly wanted. I never thought it was actually going to happen, but I wanted Alpine to show maybe a little bit of pace. This Colapinto had a very good race here last year. He finished P8, and I was like, he's maybe a guy I would look at 7.6. It's so cheap, and it's like there's maybe a shred of upside, but oh man, that car looks bad.
It's moving at a snail's pace.
Yes, and to be fair, I would sign Colapinto over Gasly, just because he's cheaper. I think they're both horrible. I think maybe Colapinto, can you catch lightning in a bottle? Maybe, probably not, based on what we saw today. Stroll was also a guy who I was like, he's got some good history here, which I think people forget about, and you wouldn't think of this place as a Lance Stroll track. Kind of is. But again, just looked so bad. So I was really hoping to get on here and be like, oh yeah, line up with Lance Stroll and Franco Colapinto. Sounds crazy, but it's cheap and there's upside. But I don't think I can pull the trigger on it. It's the Aston and the Alpine just look so bad here, and looked so bad in both practice sessions, and it didn't seem like there was anything that could change that. But yes, I was a little upset that we didn't get that opportunity, because I would have loved to get on here and say, let's all sign Franco Colapinto.
Our Marshmallow with a question: would you take Ocon over Yuki? That's an interesting question. I think I would. You would. I probably wouldn't. I'd probably take Tsunoda. He's got the faster car, which he might be figuring out. And also, I think Ocon gets beaten by his teammate. I don't think you even have that angle to it. I think Behrman beats him, which we know Tsunoda's not beating Max.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I don't think that's quite the. Tsunoda's going to get beaten by more than an Ocon is, I'm sure. But yeah, Haas has just been tough to figure out. They really have been. I've been kind of just shying away from them, but I think I take a chance on Ocon over Tsunoda. I just think Tsunoda's going to be not great. I think most of his appeal is that he's in a Red Bull, which should theoretically be better than some of these other cars, but Red Bull doesn't seem to have the advantages of this track that they have at some of the other spots. So probably just I'm out on both of them, but if I had to choose one, it'd be Esteban.
All right, so a split decision there.
Yeah, and then I guess we do have to take some time to talk about Lance, because I feel like we are the Lance Stroll show, and I'm the Lance Stroll president of the fan club, I guess, now that Logan's gone. But I know I see Felicia's comment. So excited watching Stroll do good the last time. I know we did say get off him for Italy, which worked out. He's had some great performances, and we were on him. And even when I advocated for talent driver, I think I'll look back on the 2025 season, and the thing I'll remember the most is Lance Stroll talent driver and some of the tracks we did that at. And yes, I really wanted to get on here and advocate playing for him, especially after the $2 million drop. Like, Stroller Coaster's got to go back up. But it looked really painfully bad this morning. And it makes it feel even worse that Alonso looked bad too, because that Aston is just horrible here. I do hope I'm wrong. I'm rooting for Stroll, but I just don't think you can make a play for him on the lineup here.
And there are certain tracks that car likes. This is not one of them.
Yeah. Aston's a very week-to-week car.
Yeah. I guess let's get into constructors. First constructor tier is McLaren and Ferrari. Bit of a gap with value. McLaren's up at 29.1. Ferrari down at 23.4. I think Ferrari's a very clear choice between the two of them. Ferrari could double podium. Ferrari could gain some more value. McLaren is near that 30 million pound ceiling. They need to have good days just to hold serve. They need to be the best in fantasy points among constructors just to maintain that value. And at some point, something will go wrong for them. Something else will go wrong for them. I think this is the week for Ferrari. I think Singapore is going to be the week of Ferrari as well. Let's have Ferrari out of this tier. Yeah, we can hold McLaren. Agree. We can hold McLaren, but we can buy Ferrari.
Right. I would not drop McLaren to sign Ferrari, but if I were picking one, it'd be Ferrari just because they're cheaper. And I think this is the smallest that the gap has been between these two, especially considering that I just think that the Ferraris are going to be, almost on level pegging with McLaren, maybe like still slightly behind. If you had to pick which one's going to score more fantasy points, I think it's pretty clearly McLaren. But the gap is a lot smaller than the 6 million would indicate. Whereas that has not always been the case. There were times where I was like, the gap is a lot bigger than it looks, but here it's closer.
And unless we're sitting with something like 130 million plus in value, I'm taking Ferrari for 2 races. I want to go cheap at Austin on Constructor for the sprint, but I want a good Constructor for Azerbaijan and Singapore. Unless I'm just flush with cash, then we can hold Ferrari for all eternity.
Yep. If you have a ton of cash, there are no such thing as there's no problems for you. You can just sign anyone if you're up at like 140 million. So you can take it or leave it. But yeah, just go points.
How's Verstappen in Singapore? Not good. The Red Bull and Singapore have not mixed well the last couple of years. In fact, Singapore ruined the perfect season for Red Bull a few years ago. Like that was the one blemish. Sainz in a Ferrari won Singapore, and Red Bull won everything else. So historically it has not been good. You can go back to the beginning of the show, Felicia, as far as is Max a pickup this week? The answer is no. That's the short answer. Probably going to get beat by, definitely going to get beat by McLaren, probably going to get beat by Ferrari, probably going to get beat by Mercedes. And speaking of Red Bull and Mercedes, we've got another constructor tier.
But I will say the follow-up to that is that I think we both said that for Italy, and we were wrong. Yes. So anyone else, I would say just fade. There's no worry here, but Max is always capable of pulling something out on Saturday and Sunday that you did not see on Friday, and you are left sitting there thinking, how did that happen? So Max does have that potential, but at his price point, it's something I'm willing to, if I miss it, I miss it. I don't really want to roster him for 26 million or whatever he is. And then he does what I think he'll do.
There's also the fact that this is a street course, and it is more likely to get turned on its head by a safety car happening at the right time. So you never know. Maybe the right thing happens at the right time, and Max benefits from that.
Yeah, but it's always tough being in a position where you don't like Max because he can just do some superhuman things. So it happens. If it happens, it happens. But I'm not paying to see it.
Hopefully Hamilton doesn't flip the wrong switch this time.
The magic.
Yeah, the brake magic switch. Okay, so Red Bull, Mercedes, Racing Bulls, and Williams are next constructors here, ranging from 22.5 to 15.6 million. And I think out of this tier, you could even break this in half. If we're talking between Red Bull and Mercedes, both in the 22s, Mercedes clearly the better choice. If we're looking for a bit more of a discount type of a constructor, V-Carb versus Williams, or Racing Bulls rather versus Williams, 16.5 versus 15.6. Williams probably has the edge over Racing Bulls, but Racing Bulls is a reasonable choice. I'm not touching Red Bull.
No, the two constructors I would just never ever have would be Red Bull and Aston Martin. At price, zero chance I want any Red Bull when you can have Mercedes for exactly the same. And then, I think you can't go wrong with either V-Carb or Williams. I think those are both very solid signings. So if you have one of them, keep them. If you don't, I don't know. It's really close. I'd probably go Williams just because they're slightly cheaper. I think that they should be pretty much on par with the V-Carb, maybe a little better. So I think it is actually Williams over V-Carb, but it is close. And then if you want to spend a little more, Mercedes, but at that point, I would advocate trying to figure out a way to get Ferrari instead. So I think Red Bull and Mercedes are just kind of in a weird in-between spot, and never Red Bull. Never, ever, ever Red Bull.
Yeah, we don't want Red Bull. Racing Bulls and Williams definitely are going to be in the fighting for points tier on Sunday. Williams probably has a little bit of an edge there.
Yeah,
And
I
the
think those are probably my two favorites. If you had to just pick two constructors at whatever price they're at, I would be between those two.
Yeah, and then the bottom constructors here is Aston, Haas, Sauber, and Alpine, 13.5 to 7.3, and we'll go from bottom up. Alpine, I'm only touching if I need to fill the roster spot because they're probably going to be the last two cars running if they're lucky.
Yeah.
Sauber, I'm not touching this week. Sauber does not look good this week. Haas, maybe. Haas at 12.8. If I somehow don't have the extra money for Williams, I think Haas is the best out of this tier in terms of potential on Sunday. Those cars could finish in the top 10 on Sunday if the chips fall the right way, or at the very least just outside the points. Aston, I'm not touching.
I pretty much agree with everything you said. Never Aston. Basically the same motto as Red Bull, just never, ever, ever them. Just avoid. Haas has some upside. I don't know if they'll be good, but at 12.8, it's worth finding out. And when you compare them to everyone else in the tier, like the kicks looked bad, and Alpine is Alpine. But I'm sure some people in here will have Alpine just because they're so cheap. And I've done it a few times. Just got to fill the constructor, throw Alpine in there.
If I
Maybe
have
Colapinto.
Alpine,
Yeah, go ahead.
if I have Alpine, it's to afford a better driver, and it is with the slight hope that there's like 5 cars that crash, and the Alpines aren't one of them.
Possible
like
here.
that could prop you up just a little bit. This is a place where you could see some attrition from people running into each other or walls.
Maybe our guy Lance Stroll goes bowling, takes everybody out, and then the Alpines, they're probably starting in the pit lane or P19, P20, avoid the whole carnage.
Yeah. And the other thing I'll mention in this tier, I'm pretty sure that both Racing Bulls are out of power units at this point and would have to take a penalty if something went wrong, and would be starting at the back. Just keep that in mind as well. I think Alpine's starting last anyway, but I think they're in a similar situation power unit wise where I think they're into penalty territory. I don't remember for sure. And yeah, Tipsy Socks points out Alpine is near the 4 in terms of value. So not likely to lose value, but also not likely to produce a whole lot for you.
Yeah, you're not going to get very many points. Just not going to happen. Again, I wanted Colapinto to show something, and then maybe I could get up here and say Alpine at 7.3 is a great bargain. They might still be, but I just don't think there's much upside. There would have been upside if they looked even okay this morning, but yeah, I can't get there, unfortunately. As much as I wanted to, I just can't get there.
All right, so $100 million lineup. Maybe it's time for that. I'll recap Monza real quick. So the lineup that I went with, the one that I officially went with, was Hamilton, Albon, Hulkenberg, Tsunoda, Sainz, talent driver, Ferrari. That was good for 826 points. That only cost 95.7. That was well under the 100. The only real miss in that lineup was Hulkenberg, who was not able to start the race. The team told him to park it because of a hydraulic problem. I wish they ran these cars until they dropped. I hate this. The power unit has to last like half the season now. Like it used to be, you could run the cars and not have to save miles on the engine, and I think we lost something there. But anyway, yeah, Hulkenberg was the one big miss there just because of a fluky mechanical thing. I proposed another lineup that actually scored fewer points, so I'm glad that wasn't my real lineup. Anyway, my lineup for Azerbaijan, it costs a total of 99.3 million, and it is Leclerc, Hamilton, Antonelli, talent driver, Sainz, Ocon, and Williams for a total of 99.3 million. What do you think about that?
Sounds good. I mean, I feel like most of these you put together end up scoring extremely well, which does show that you can be very competitive with 100 million if you choose the right guys.
We've had some 1,000 pointers for 100 million or less.
Yeah, it helps to build budget. You always want more budget rather than less, but you can stay competitive and claw your way back into a league even if you're lower budget than someone ahead of you. And it is tough because now you really are focused on points depending on where you're at in your league standings. Like we're entering the home stretch for the most part, and it is now time to focus on points, and your value is probably going to fluctuate a little bit, but we're probably not at the spot like early season where you're looking at $6 million gains or big losses. It's focus on points and just go best driver you can.
Yeah, for sure. If you want alternate lineups here, like one possibility might be trading Williams for Haas, and then Ocon becomes somebody like let me look up the list. Like somebody like Lawson or Behrman. Then you have like two Haas things. Like as it is, I have two Williams things. Like I prefer Williams over Haas in general, though. If you wanted to make tweaks here, another possibility might be we fiddle around with the top end, so where we get Russell in there somehow. Maybe we trade Williams for Alpine, and then Hamilton could become somebody like Russell. I bet that's another way you could go with this lineup. But yeah, I think Alpine's going to just be so bad. Like compared to Williams, you're giving up so many points. Like it's actually going to be tough to make that up if we're prioritizing points.
Yeah, I see a couple people talking about Ocon versus Lawson. Definitely Lawson for me by a pretty significant margin. Unless you just really can't make that extra 1.5, 1.6, unless you can't, or what is it?
I like Lawson I also like Lawson better. I just couldn't make it work in this $100 million lineup. But if I had got like $102 million to work with, absolutely.
Yeah, if you can afford it, I think Lawson is definitely worth the extra salary over Esteban.
All right. Looking around for any other questions.
Oh, I like that some people appreciated the 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea references. See, this is a very cultured show as well. We can do everything here. Very versatile.
We're somewhat reasonably read people. And people playing up Russell, and I think we've touched on a lot of these things. So yeah, I think that is just about it for this week. Definitely keep the conversation going on our Discord. You can find that linked in the GridRival app. Nice community there that'll be discussing lineups with you. And join us in 2 weeks. Singapore Grand Prix coming up, and should be another good one, another street course. Some history there. Some Renault shenanigans all those years ago. And somehow Briatore is back running that same team. What a world.
Yeah. And I will say for everyone who is in the States playing the league, put a lineup in tonight. I know most people, myself included, never finalize anything until after FP3. But I would make sure that all your spots are filled tonight in case you miss your alarm early in the morning.
Don't oversleep lockdown. Set a lineup. Set any lineup.
So have something in place, and then you can always make changes after FP3. That's what I plan on doing. But the last thing you want is to have an open spot that you didn't fill, or you didn't select a talent driver, and then you wake up a couple hours late and you are in trouble.
Yeah. All right. So on that note, if you enjoyed that, hit like and subscribe. Find out every time we do one of these. We do these leading up to every Formula One race. So we got 7 more of those this year. And we'll see you back in 2 weeks for a preview of the Singapore Grand Prix. Thank you so much for watching.
Thanks, everyone. All right. We are offline.